Ambassador Chen Meilin stood perfectly still in the center of the grand amphitheater. Around her, representatives from 47 different alien species filled the massive circular chamber. Some floated in special tanks filled with methane, others hung from the ceiling like giant bats. The crystalline luminari sang softly to each other in frequencies that made her teeth ache, even through her environmental suit. She had stood in this same spot many times before. Each time she had come with hope. Each time she had left with less of it. Today would be different. Today would be the last time. Order, order in the chamber, Premier Zax Theta commanded from his elevated platform. His purple tentacles waved in what humans had learned meant impatience. The Premier had never liked humans much. None of them really had, despite everything humanity had done for them. The noise in the chamber slowly died down. All eyes, sensors, and various organs of perception turned toward the center where the voting would take place. "We gather today to vote on Regulation 17-4A, the Premier announced. His voice boomed through the universal translators. The proposal to further restrict human expansion into sectors 7 through 15 of the Outer Rim. The floor recognizes the Vorthak delegation. An insect-like creature the size of a small car clicked forward. Its compound eyes reflected Chen Meilin's image 1,000 times. The Vorthak Empire supports this restriction. Humans spread too quickly. They adapt too fast. They take barren worlds and make them livable in mere decades. This aggressive expansion threatens the natural order of the galaxy. Chen Meilin remained silent. She had given up arguing 3 votes ago. "The Qatari delegation seconds this motion," squeaked a small, furry ambassador from across the room. This stung more than the others. Humanity had saved the Qatari from a plague that had killed half their population. Human doctors had worked without sleep for months to develop a cure. And yet here they were voting against humanity again. One by one, the votes came in. The Luminari sang their agreement in harmonious tones. The Dracal pounded their approval with their massive fists. The ethereal whisperfolk simply flickered their consent. 43 species voted yes. 3 abstained. 1 voted no. The young Feltani Republic, who remembered that humans had defended them from pirates just 2 years ago. "The motion passes," Premier Zax Theta announced with obvious satisfaction. "Humanity is hereby restricted from expansion into the designated sectors. Any human vessels found establishing colonies in these regions will be considered in violation of Council law. Ambassador Chen, your species will comply." It was not a question. The Premier's 12 eyes stared down at her, waiting for the usual human protests, the passionate speeches about fairness and contribution, the presentations showing how much humanity had given to the galaxy. But Chen Meilin simply nodded. "Understood, Premier. Humanity will comply." The silence that followed was unexpected. Several ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. They had prepared for arguments, not this quiet acceptance. "That is good," the Premier said slowly, his tentacles curling in confusion. "The Council is pleased with humanity's newfound wisdom in accepting its proper place." Chen Meilin touched a small device on her wrist. Across the entire station, every human stopped what they were doing at exactly the same moment. Engineers paused mid-repair. Doctors stopped during examinations. Teachers halted their lessons. For just a second, all 8,000 humans on Station Nexus Prime stood completely still. Then they continued their work as if nothing had happened. "If there is nothing else, Premier, I should return to my office," Chen Meilin said calmly. Yes, you may go." The Premier dismissed her with a wave of 3 tentacles. Chen Meilin walked out of the amphitheater with measured steps. She did not hurry. She did not slow down. She simply walked, her boots clicking steadily against the metal floor. Behind her, the council members began discussing their next topic, something about trade route taxation. In her office, her aide, Marcus Thompson, was already waiting. He had watched the vote on the screens. His dark face showed no emotion, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. "Was it unanimous again?" he asked, "all but one." The Feltani remembered their debt. Marcus nodded slowly. "The others?" "They voted as expected. Even the Qatari." Marcus's jaw tightened. His daughter was one of the doctors who had saved the Qatari. She had nearly died from exhaustion during that plague. "So we proceed?" "We proceed." Chen Meilin sat down at her desk and pulled up a holographic display. "Send the message to all human colonies. Begin Protocol 7. Marcus's fingers flew over his own display. Across human space, the message spread through quantum communicators that the Council didn't even know existed. Humanity had never shared their best technology. They had learned early that the Council feared what it didn't understand. Within an hour, Chen Mei-lin submitted the official documentation to the Council's administrative office. It was a simple form, barely 3 pages long. A notification of withdrawal from the Galactic Council, effective in 3 standard months. The clerk who received it, a 6-armed Bendari, barely looked at it. Withdrawal from... Wait, what? His eyes widened as he actually read the document. This cannot be correct. You are withdrawing humanity from the Council? That is correct. But why? You have been members for 50 years. Chen Mei-lin's expression remained neutral. The Council has made it clear that humanity's presence causes discomfort. We are simply respecting the wishes of the majority. I must inform the Premier immediately. Of course. Please note that we are requesting 3 months to properly reorganize our assets and ensure a smooth transition. We don't want to cause any disruption. The Bendari's arms shook as he processed the form. Within minutes, alarms began sounding in the administrative wing. Not emergency alarms, administrative ones. The kind that meant paperwork had arrived that nobody had expected. Premier Zaxatheta arrived in Chen Mei-lin's office within the hour, moving faster than she had ever seen him move. This is absurd. You cannot simply withdraw. Actually, Premier, according to Article 9 of the Council Charter, any member species may withdraw with proper notice. We are providing that notice, but why? Because of the vote? Humanity has faced restrictions before. Chen Mei-lin pulled up a list on her display. 17 major restrictions in 17 cycles. 23 minor restrictions. 42 delayed votes on human proposals that were later adopted and credited to other species. 138 formal complaints filed against humanity for aggressive development, despite breaking no laws. She turned the display toward him. We have documented everything, Premier. Every vote. Every restriction. Every time humanity's contributions were minimized or ignored. We are not leaving in anger. We are leaving because it is clear we are not wanted. The Premier's tentacles writhed in agitation. This is an overreaction. The Council simply wishes to maintain order. And you will have it. Humanity will be gone in 3 months. What about your obligations? The medical stations? The agricultural supplies? The defense forces protecting the outer colonies? We will transition all responsibilities to Council-approved species. Everything will continue to function. The Premier leaned forward, his 12 eyes narrowing. This is a negotiation tactic. You want better terms. No, Premier. This is a notification. We want nothing from the Council anymore. For the first time in 50 years of diplomatic relations, Premier Zaxatheta seemed genuinely shaken. The Council will need to vote on this. The Council may vote however it wishes. But check your charter, Premier. Withdrawal is a unilateral right. You cannot vote to keep us. After the Premier left, Marcus returned to the office. The Qatari ambassador is requesting an urgent meeting. So are the Feltani, and surprisingly 3 others. Schedule them all for tomorrow. Individual meetings, not group ones. Do you think any of them will change their minds? Chen Mei-lin looked out the window at the stars beyond the station. Somewhere out there, human ships were already beginning to move. Supplies were being redirected. Plans that had been waiting for years were being activated. It doesn't matter if they do, Marcus. The decision is made. In silence we leave. Let them have the galaxy they voted for, one without humans in it. As the lights of the station continued to glow around them, neither of them mentioned what they both knew. The galaxy was about to learn exactly how much it had depended on the species it had tried so hard to contain. But by then, humanity would be gone and the lesson would come too late. The first month passed quietly. Most of the galaxy didn't even notice what was happening. Dr. Sarah Chen worked in Medical Station 7, one of 30 human-run facilities in Council space. She looked at her schedule for the day. 23 appointments, all different species, all expecting the miracle treatments that only human medicine could provide. The Vorthak ambassador's son needed his weekly immune boost. The luminary conductor required adjustment to her harmonic stabilizers. The old Dracal warrior was here for his joint regeneration therapy. She treated them all with the same professional care she always had. But after each appointment, she made a small note in a special file. A file that documented exactly which treatments each species would lose access to in 2 months. Her Qatari nurse, Pip, noticed her mood. "Dr. Sarah, you seem sad today." Sarah forced a smile. "Just thinking about the future, Pip." "The council vote?" "Do not worry. The restrictions mean nothing. Humans always find a way around them." Sarah didn't tell Pip that this time humans had found a different way, a way that would leave Pip's entire species without the anti-parasitic treatments they needed to survive. The same treatments the council had declared unnecessarily advanced and restricted from open distribution just 6 months ago. Across the station, Commander Jake Morrison supervised the defense grid. Human engineers had built it, maintained it, and improved it for 30 years. The council called it adequate. They didn't know about the 17 hidden upgrades that made it actually work. The pirates knew, though. They had learned to avoid any station with human defenders. "Sir," his Lieutenant Zhao approached with a tablet. "The council sent the transition team. They want to learn our defense protocols." Jake looked at the team. 2 Vorthak engineers who could barely understand basic shield harmonics. A Dracal warrior who thought all space combat was about brute force. A whisperfolk who kept forgetting that solid objects existed. "Give them the manual," Jake said. "Just the manual, sir." "The official council-approved manual. Nothing more," Zhao understood. The manual contained the basic systems. Not the backdoor codes Jake's team used to triple the scanner range. Not the algorithm that predicted pirate attacks with 90% accuracy. Not the shadow protocol that had saved the station from 12 different invasions that the council never even knew about. "They won't be able to defend the station with just the manual," Joe said quietly. "Then maybe they should have thought about that before voting to restrict human military advancement for being too aggressive," Jake replied. In the agricultural sector, Director Ming supervised the shutdown of Greenhouse Complex Alpha. The tomatoes hung red and perfect on their vines. The wheat grew tall and golden. The alien crops from 17 different worlds flourished in carefully controlled environments. "Ma'am, the Qatari delegation is here," her assistant informed her. 3 Qatari shuffled in, their fur matted with worry. "Director Ming, we heard rumors. Terrible rumors. That humans will stop food production?" "Not stop," Ming said carefully. "We're transitioning to council standard agricultural methods. You'll still have food, but your greenhouses produce 5 times what standard methods produce. Millions of Qatari depend on this food. Then perhaps your ambassador should have considered that before voting to restrict human agricultural expansion. We wanted to build 40 new complexes. The council said 5 was too many." The lead Qatari's whiskers trembled. We didn't know it would affect existing production." "You didn't ask," Ming said simply. "You just voted." On the engineering deck, Chief Engineer Carlos Reeves watched the Vorthak team attempt to understand the quantum communication array. They had been at it for 3 weeks. They still couldn't figure out how humans had made obsolete technology work faster than their most advanced systems. "It's impossible," clicked the lead Vorthak engineer. "These components shouldn't even function together." Carlos shrugged. "It's all in the manual." It wasn't, of course. The manual didn't explain the 17,000 minor modifications, the creative programming that convinced incompatible systems to work together, the human intuition that knew exactly when to hit a console to make it work better. "Show us how you really maintain it," the Vorthak demanded. That would be sharing restricted technology. Council Regulation 15-3B. Proposed and voted for by the Vorthak Empire. If I remember correctly. The Vorthak's compound eyes glittered with frustration. But he couldn't argue with his own species' law. In her office, Chen Mei-Lin received daily reports. Humanity's withdrawal was proceeding exactly as planned. Ships were being quietly recalled. Resources were being shifted. Knowledge was being carefully legally withdrawn. Marcus entered with a concerned expression. "Ambassador, we have a problem. The Feltani Republic is requesting asylum." "Asylum?" "Their entire governing council. They've calculated what will happen when we leave. They want to come with us." Chen Mei-Lin considered this. The Feltani were the only ones who had voted against the restrictions. "Tell them we'll consider individual applications. But they must understand they would be leaving council space forever." They said they understand. They said a galaxy without humans is not a galaxy worth living in. At least someone learned before it was too late. The second month brought more visible changes. The medical stations began closing one by one. Each closure was perfectly legal, with 2 weeks' notice as required by council law. The patients were transferred to council facilities. The council facilities that couldn't perform even half the procedures humans had considered routine. The agricultural complexes switched to automated systems. They still produced food, but only basic nutrition. The 17 varieties of Qatari fruit that humans had developed to combat their chronic health issues? Gone. The enhanced grains that fed the luminari and gave them the energy for their songs? Replaced with standard feed that barely met their needs. The defense forces pulled back from the outer colonies. Technically, those colonies were still protected by council forces. But council forces didn't know that the pirates always attacked during ion storms. They didn't know about the secret base hidden in the asteroid field of Sector 9. They didn't know that the Pirate King had a brother in the council navy who fed him information. Humans knew. Humans had always known. But humans were leaving. By the middle of the second month, the effects were becoming impossible to ignore. 3 colonies reported pirate attacks. Without human tactical response, the pirates escaped with millions in resources. A space station's life support system failed when nobody could maintain the unofficial modifications that made it run at twice its designed capacity. 17 trade routes reported delays when the quantum gates began to malfunction. Premier Zax Theta called an emergency council session. "The humans are sabotaging our systems," he declared. Chen Mei Lin stood calmly in the center once again. "We are doing nothing of the sort. We are following every council regulation, every law, every restriction you placed upon us, but things are failing. No, Premier. Things are returning to council standards. The same standards you said were sufficient. The same standards you insisted we follow instead of our aggressive improvements. You knew this would happen." "Yes," Chen Meilin said simply. "We knew, we tried to tell you. For 50 years we tried. You chose not to listen." The Qatari ambassador stood up, his small form shaking. Some of us wish to reconsider." "It's too late for reconsideration," Chen Meilin replied. "The withdrawal continues." In the final month, the exodus became visible. Human ships began leaving in groups. Not fleeing, leaving, organized, purposeful. They took everything that was theirs. Not just equipment, but knowledge. Not just resources, but potential. The council watched helplessly as humanity dismantled 50 years of integration in 90 days. Every removal was legal. Every withdrawal followed protocol. They were doing exactly what the council had asked. They were leaving. The human engineers who had kept impossible systems running through creativity and stubborn determination, gone. The human doctors who had treated diseases the council couldn't even diagnose, gone. The human teachers who had found ways to educate species so different they could barely communicate, gone. And in the silence they left behind, the galaxy began to understand what it had lost. But understanding and action were 2 different things. The council's pride would not let them beg. Not yet. On the last day, Chen Meilin stood in the empty human section of the station. Everything was clean. Everything was functional. Everything was exactly to council standards, which meant everything was barely adequate. "The last transport is ready, Ambassador," Marcus informed her. She took one last look at the place humans had called home for 50 years. They had improved it, protected it, loved it. And in return, they had been restricted, controlled, and diminished. "Then let's go," she said. "It's time to see what humanity can do without restrictions." As the last human ship departed Station Nexus Prime, it sent a single message to the council. "We leave you with exactly what you asked for, a galaxy without human interference. May you find it everything you voted for." 6 months had passed since the last human ship disappeared into the void. At first, Premier Zax Theta had celebrated. The council chambers were quieter now. No more passionate human speeches about progress and potential. No more proposals for unnecessary improvements. No more complaints about restrictions. Just peaceful, orderly sessions where everyone agreed and nothing changed. He should have been happy. He was not. The premier stood in his office, looking at the reports scattered across his desk. Each one told the same story in different ways. The galaxy was failing. "Premier, the Qatari ambassador is here again," his assistant announced. The small, furry creature that entered looked nothing like the proud diplomat who had voted against humanity just months ago. His fur was patchy and gray. His eyes were dull with exhaustion. 30 million, Premier," the Qatari said without greeting. 30 million dead in 6 months. "I am aware of your losses. When are you?" The Qatari interrupted. something he would never have dared to do before. Do you know what it's like to watch your children waste away? The parasites are back, Premier. Without the human treatments, they're killing us faster than ever. The council medical teams are working on a solution. The Qatari laughed bitterly. The council medical teams can't even understand how the human medicine worked. They say it will take decades to develop something similar. We don't have decades. We barely have months. After the Qatari left, the luminary conductor floated in. Her crystalline form was clouded, her natural song reduced to a weak hum. The harvests have failed, she sang mournfully. Without the enhanced grains the humans developed, my people cannot maintain our harmonics. We are fading. Surely you can survive on standard nutrition? Survive? Perhaps, but we are the luminari. We exist to sing. Without our songs, we are just pretty rocks floating in space. The humans understood this. They made food that fed not just our bodies but our souls. You called it unnecessary. Now you see what necessity truly means. The reports kept coming. 3 more colonies had fallen to pirates. The defense fleet, now run entirely by council species, had responded to exactly 0 distress calls in time. They followed protocol perfectly. They just didn't know all the secrets that made protection actually work. The quantum communication network was failing across 7 sectors. Messages that once took seconds now took hours. Some never arrived at all. The Vorthak engineers insisted they were maintaining everything correctly. They were. They just didn't have the human ability to make broken things work, through sheer determination and creative solutions. Trade was slowing. Ships arrived late or not at all. The complex web of commerce that had connected 47 species was unraveling. It turned out that web had been held together by thousands of small human innovations that nobody had noticed until they were gone. But the worst part was the stagnation. No new technologies, no creative solutions, no crazy ideas that somehow worked. The council had prided itself on stability, on order, on maintaining the status quo. Now they had exactly that, and it was killing them. In the outer rim, Captain Threk of the Dracal Navy watched helplessly as another colony burned. The pirates had come during an ion storm just like they always did. But Threk hadn't known they always did that. The humans had never shared that information. Why would they? The council had said human tactical knowledge was too aggressive. Sir, should we pursue? His lieutenant asked. Into an ion storm? That's suicide. The humans used to do it all the time. The humans were insane. Threk roared. Then quieter. The humans were insane and they kept us safe. On the medical station that had once been run by Dr. Sarah Chen, a Vorthak medic struggled with equipment he didn't understand. The machine was supposed to synthesize antibodies. The manual said to press 3 buttons in sequence. He did. Nothing happened. He didn't know that Sarah had always hummed while pressing the buttons, and the machine's broken sensor interpreted the vibrations as a 4th command. Such a simple thing. Such a human thing. The ability to work around problems instead of being stopped by them. The medic watched another patient deteriorate, knowing that 6 months ago, this would have been a routine treatment. Now it was a death sentence. The agricultural disaster was spreading. Worlds that had been self-sufficient now begged for food shipments. The council's emergency supplies, which humans had warned were inadequate, ran out in 3 months. Famine, a word that hadn't been spoken in council space for generations, was being whispered in frightened tones. Director Ming had been right. The council had never asked how much of their food security depended on human innovation. They had just assumed it would continue forever, even as they restricted human agricultural expansion. In the council chambers, emergency session followed emergency session. Each species blamed the others. The Vorthak said the Dracal weren't maintaining defense properly. The Dracal said the Luminari weren't managing commerce effectively. The Luminari said the Qatari were using too many medical resources. Nobody said what they were all thinking. The humans had done all of it. And they had done it while being called aggressive and incompatible. Premier Zax Theta called for order, but his authority was crumbling. 3 species had already announced they were considering withdrawal from the council. Not to join the humans, they didn't even know where the humans had gone. Just to escape the slow collapse of a galaxy that had forgotten how to grow. We need to find them, the Feltani ambassador said during one session. They were one of the few species still thriving, mainly because they had maintained private trade agreements with human colonies before the Exodus. Find them? The premier scoffed. They abandoned us. No, the Feltani replied firmly. We abandoned them 17 times. We voted to restrict them, to contain them, to diminish them. They simply took us at our word and left. They have a responsibility. They fulfilled every responsibility. They transitioned every system. They followed every law. They even gave us 3 months' notice. We're the ones who failed, Premier. We failed to value what we had. A year after the Exodus, the true scope of the disaster was clear. The Qatari had lost a third of their population. 3 colonies had been completely abandoned to pirates. The quantum network had failed entirely in 12 sectors. Trade between some species had stopped altogether. But worse than the physical collapse was the psychological one. The council species had believed themselves superior. They had thought humans were just aggressive newcomers who needed to be controlled. Now they knew the truth. Humans hadn't been aggressive. They had been ambitious. They hadn't been incompatible. They had been innovative. And in their absence, the galaxy was dying. The search for humanity began in earnest during the 2nd year. Probe after probe was sent into the void beyond the rim. Most found nothing. Some never returned. A few sent back confusing data about space that bent wrong, about energy signatures that shouldn't exist. The council didn't understand what they were seeing. They couldn't. They had spent so long restricting human technology that they couldn't even recognize it when they found traces of it. Meanwhile, in markets across the galaxy, human technology became more valuable than gold. A medical scanner that still worked could buy a small moon. An agriculture module that could grow human-developed crops was worth a fleet of ships. Even a simple human-designed tool with its elegant efficiency was treasured. Species began to realize how much of their daily life had been touched by human innovation. The comfortable chairs that adjusted to any anatomy, the universal translators that somehow understood context and emotion, the food preservers that kept things fresh for years, the small conveniences that had made life better in 1,000 tiny ways, all gone. All impossible to replicate. The Council's best scientists couldn't understand half of how human technology worked. It wasn't just advanced, it was different. It was technology built by a species that saw problems as challenges, not obstacles. The Whisper folk, who had barely noticed the physical world, now found that world crashing into their realm. Without human-maintained barriers between dimensions, reality was bleeding into their space. They begged the Council for help. The Council had nothing to offer. We should have listened, the Whisper folk representative said, its form flickering with distress. When the humans proposed the dimensional stabilizers, we called them unnecessary. We said our natural abilities were enough. We were fools. By the end of the 2nd year, 7 more species had left the Council, not in an organized exodus like the humans, but in desperate flight. They scattered to the edges of known space, hoping to find somewhere, anywhere, that still functioned. Premier Zaxis Theta sat alone in his office most days now. The Council still met, but there was nothing to vote on. No new proposals, no solutions, just reports of failure and requests for help that couldn't be fulfilled. He thought about Chen Mei-Lin's last words often. We leave you with exactly what you asked for, a galaxy without human interference. They had gotten exactly that, and it was killing them. 3 years had passed since humanity's departure, when the breakthrough came. A lone council probe, one of thousands sent into the void, finally sent back clear data. Not the confusing readings they had gotten before, but actual images. What they showed changed everything. Captain Korvax of the exploration vessel, Last Hope, stared at the screen in disbelief. His crew, a mixed group from 12 different species, gathered around him in stunned silence. That's impossible, whispered the Vorthek navigator. Before them, captured by their long-range sensors, was a city floating in the void between stars. Not built on a planet or moon, but hanging in empty space like a jewel against black velvet. It was massive, easily the size of a small continent, and it glowed with lights that formed patterns no council species had ever imagined. There's more, Captain, the sensor operator said, her voice shaking. Dozens more. They're everywhere. As they moved deeper into what had been marked as empty, worthless space, the truth revealed itself. Humanity hadn't just left. They had built something extraordinary. 700 systems, according to their scans, each one connected by tunnels through space that the Council's science said couldn't exist. Ships moved between them in minutes, not months. Energy flowed from stars wrapped in partial spheres that collected every photon. Worlds that had been dead rocks now gleamed with blue oceans and green continents. How? the Draco weapons officer asked. It's only been 3 years. The answer came from an intercepted communication. Not encrypted because humans didn't care if they were overheard. A casual conversation between 2 human cargo pilots. Remember when we had to hide the warp drive designs because the council said they were too dangerous? Yeah, and the terraforming tech they called environmentally irresponsible. Don't forget the medical nanobots. Too aggressive, they said. Well, nobody's stopping us now. The council had thought they were restricting human expansion. In reality, they had been restricting human restraint. Every rejected proposal, every banned technology, every restricted innovation, humans had kept them all. Waiting, planning, ready. Captain Korvax sent an urgent message back to Council space, then made a decision that would have been unthinkable 3 years ago. He ordered his ship to approach the nearest human station with a white flag signal, the ancient Earth symbol for peaceful intentions. The human station was a sphere of silver and gold, rotating slowly against the stars. Ships of designs the Council had never seen docked and departed in smooth choreography. As the last hope approached, a human voice came through their communicators. Not hostile, not even surprised, just polite. Council vessel, this is Haven Station Control. State your intentions. This is Captain Korvax. We come in peace. We wish to speak with someone in authority. One moment, Captain. The voice that came next was familiar. Commander Jake Morrison, who had once defended Council stations from pirates. Captain Korvax. It's been a while. What brings the Council to our space? Commander Morrison. The Council needs to understand what you've built here. What we've built? Just what we always wanted to build, Captain. The Council said our ideas were too dangerous, too aggressive, too fast, so we came out here where we could build them anyway. In 3 years? This should have taken centuries. Morrison's laugh was not unkind. Captain, do you know what humans spent most of their energy on in Council space? Paperwork, forms, approval requests, environmental impact studies for technology. That doesn't impact any environment. We spent 90% of our time asking permission and 10% actually working. Out here, we just work. The last hope was given permission to dock. Captain Korvax and his senior staff walked through corridors that should have been science fiction. The walls healed themselves when scratched. The air smelled different for each species, automatically adjusted to their comfort. The gravity changed gradually as they walked, accommodating everyone's needs. They were led to a conference room where Chen Mei-Lin waited. She looked exactly as she had 3 years ago. Not younger, not older. Exactly the same, Captain Korvax. Welcome to the United Human Systems. Ambassador. Or I'm sorry, what is your title now? Coordinator Chen will do. We don't stand much on ceremony here. Too busy building the future. The Qatari science officer couldn't contain himself. Your medical technology. Please, my people are dying. The parasites, Chen held up a hand. We know about the Qatari situation. We've been monitoring Council space. We have a cure. A permanent one. The parasites aren't killed. They're reprogrammed to be beneficial. They now clean your blood instead of consuming it. The Qatari fell to his knees. Please, please share it. Millions have died. We'll sell it to the Qatari directly, not through the Council. But why not through the Council? Because the Council doesn't exist as far as we're concerned. Individual species? We'll trade with them. Help them even. But the Council as an organization? No, Captain Korvax found his voice. What you've built here? It's beyond anything we imagined. No, Captain. It's exactly what we imagined. What we tried to share with you for 50 years. Every rejected proposal is here. Every restricted technology. Every too aggressive innovation. We built them all. She gestured to a window showing the Void City. That city? It houses 12 billion humans. Not cramped, not struggling. Comfortable, happy. We have more than enough resources because we're not limited to planets anymore. We build in 3 dimensions in space itself. The energy requirements alone are met by our stellar collectors, partial Dyson spheres, Captain. We proposed them 15 years ago. The Council called them an affront to natural stellar evolution. The luminary officer hummed in amazement. Your ships. They move impossibly fast. Quantum tunneling through folded space. We perfected it 2 years ago. Without Council regulations, we could actually test what we theorized. She led them through displays showing the extent of human achievement. Medical technology that made death a choice, not an inevitability. agriculture that could feed trillions, defense systems that made violence pointless because they couldn't be overcome, art and music that incorporated styles from 100 Earth cultures and was now evolving into something entirely new. But the most important thing we built, Chen said, was freedom. Freedom to try, freedom to fail, freedom to improve without asking permission from species who feared change. This is incredible, Captain Korvax admitted. The Council needs to see this. They need to understand why, so they can vote to restrict it again. Chen's voice was calm but firm. Captain, we've watched the Council's collapse. We know about the famines, the pirate attacks, the failing technology. We take no pleasure in it, but we also take no responsibility for it. The Council chose fear over progress. They chose control over collaboration. Now they're living with that choice. What people are dying. People were always dying, Captain. Humans just kept finding ways to save them. And every time we did, the Council called us aggressive. Too fast, too much. So we left. And now we're showing the galaxy what too much really looks like. The tour continued for hours. Each revelation was more staggering than the last. Humans had developed true artificial intelligence, not the limited systems the Council approved, but actual thinking machines that were partners, not tools. They had cracked the code of consciousness transfer, allowing minds to move between bodies, even mechanical ones. They had built virtual worlds as real as physical ones, where humans could live entire lives in moments of real time. We're not even trying to hide anymore, Chen explained. In the first year, we were careful. We thought the Council might try to stop us. By the second year, we realized you couldn't. By the third year, we stopped caring. The Council will want to re-establish relations, Captain Korvax said. Full membership. No restrictions. Whatever you want, Chen smiled, but it was sad. Captain, look around you. Look at what we've built in 3 years without the Council. Why would we ever go back to asking permission to progress? She handed him a data pad. This contains our trade terms for individual species. Medical supplies for the Qatari. Food for the Luminari, defense contracts for colonies threatened by pirates. We'll help, but as business partners, not as Council members. And if the Council refuses, then the Council continues to collapse. Captain, we didn't leave to punish you. We left to grow. The fact that you're suffering without us is not revenge. It's just the natural consequence of driving away those who kept you afloat. As the last hope prepared to leave, loaded with medical supplies purchased at fair but firm prices, Captain Korvax asked one last question. Where will humanity go from here? What's your plan? Chen looked out at the stars where new human ships were launching every hour, heading for galaxies the Council hadn't even mapped. The same plan we've always had, Captain. To go forward, to grow, to become more. The Council wanted to keep us small, but humanity was never meant to be small. We were meant to reach for the stars. All of them. As the Council vessel departed, its crew carried recordings of everything they had seen, the floating cities, the stellar collectors, the impossible ships, the cured diseases, the conquered death. But most importantly, they carried the truth. Humanity hadn't transcended because they were superior. They had transcended because they were free, free from the fear that had paralyzed the Council. 5 years after humanity's exodus, the grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council looked very different. Half the seats were empty. The Qatari section was draped in mourning colors for the 40 million they had lost. The Luminari's crystalline forms were dull and cracked, their once beautiful songs reduced to mournful hums. Pirates controlled 30% of what had once been Council space. Premier Zax Theta was gone, having resigned in disgrace 2 years earlier. His replacement, a younger Drakel named Thorian, had called this emergency session for one purpose: to formally beg humanity to return. The vote had been unanimous. Even the Vorthak, who had led the charge against humanity for decades, had agreed. They had no choice. The galaxy was dying without human innovation, human protection, human hope. A single human ship approached Station Nexus Prime. Not a fleet, not a delegation, just one small vessel carrying one person. Chen Meilin walked into the grand amphitheater, exactly as she had 5 years ago. Calm, composed, wearing a simple black suit that somehow looked more impressive than all the ceremonial robes around her. She had not aged a day. The Council members had aged decades. Coordinator Chen, Premier Thorian began, his voice lacking the authority his predecessor had once wielded. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I came out of courtesy, Premier. Nothing more. The Qatari ambassador, thin and frail, stood up. Please, we're dying. 50 million of my people are gone. We need your help. You've been purchasing medical supplies from us for 2 years. Our trade agreement is quite generous, but it's not enough. We need human doctors. Human researchers. We need you to come back. Chen's expression didn't change. No. The single word hung in the air like a death sentence. The luminary conductor tried next, her voice barely a whisper of its former beauty. We have learned our lesson. Humanity's contributions were invaluable. We see that now, do you? Or do you just see that you're dying without us? The uncomfortable silence was answer enough. Premier Thorian cleared his throat. The Council has prepared an offer. Full membership for humanity. No restrictions. 5 permanent seats on the governing board. Veto power over any legislation affecting human interests. Access to all Council resources. It's everything you could want. Chen pulled up a holographic display from her wrist device. Images of the united human systems filled the air. Cities that floated between stars. Ships that bent space and time. Humans working alongside artificial intelligences that the Council's science said couldn't exist. Children playing in gardens that grew in vacuum. Stars wrapped in energy collectors that turned their entire output into usable power. Premier, look at these images. Really look at them. In 5 years of freedom, we've achieved more than in 50 years under Council restrictions. We've cured death itself for those who choose it. We've made energy limitless. We've turned dead space into paradise. Why would we ever accept Council membership again? Because it's the right thing to do? The Premier's voice was weak, uncertain. Chen laughed. Not cruelly, but with genuine amusement. The right thing? Premier, for 50 years we did the right thing. We shared our medicine, our food, our protection. We asked for nothing but the freedom to grow. And what did we get? 17 major restrictions, 23 minor ones, constant votes against our proposals, accusations of being too aggressive, too fast, too different. She stood and walked to the center of the amphitheater, the same spot where she had stood for so many votes against humanity. Let me tell you what happened after we left. The Feltani, who alone voted to support us, came to us directly. They asked for trade agreements, technology exchanges, mutual defense. We gave them everything. Today, the Feltani Republic is thriving. They have cities in space, medical technology that makes them effectively immortal, and pirates flee at the sight of their ships. The Feltani ambassador, looking healthy and confident, nodded in confirmation. Any species can have what the Feltani have, Chen continued. They just have to come to us as equals. Not as Council members following Council rules, but as independent partners ready to embrace change. You're destroying the Council. The Vorthak ambassador clicked angrily. No. The Council destroyed itself. We just stopped propping up its corpse. The Whisperfolk representative, its form flickering between dimensions, spoke up. Some of us want to leave the Council and join you directly. Would you accept us? Individual species? Yes, but understand what that means. It means embracing change. It means accepting that stability is stagnation. It means being willing to grow beyond what you thought possible. The Whisperfolk have spent millennia barely acknowledging physical reality. Could you handle suddenly having access to technology that merges the physical and the dimensional? We would try. Trying isn't enough. You have to commit. The Feltani didn't just try. They dove in completely. They changed their entire educational system to teach human-style innovation. They restructured their government to reward risk-taking instead of punishing it. They became partners, not recipients. Premier Thorian made one last attempt. What if the Council disbanded? What if we started over? Chen considered this. Premier, the problem was never the Council as an organization. It was the mindset, the fear of change, the need to control, the belief that keeping things the same was better than letting them grow. Until that changes, the structure doesn't matter. She pulled up another display. This one showed trade statistics. We currently have direct trade agreements with 15 former Council species. Medical supplies for the Qatari, food for the Luminari, defense contracts for 7 colonies. We're not cruel. We're not vengeful. We're just not coming back. Then what was the point of this meeting? The Premier's frustration was obvious. You asked me to come, but since I'm here, let me make something clear. Chen's voice carried to every corner of the amphitheater. The United Human Systems will continue to grow. We're already sending ships to other galaxies. We're already building structures you can't imagine. We're already solving problems you don't know exist yet. In 10 years, in 50 years, in 100 years, we'll be so far beyond where we are now that today will look primitive. She paused, letting that sink in. Any species that wants to join us on that journey is welcome. But you join as equals, as partners, as fellow travelers to the future, not as council members following council rules. The age of asking permission to progress is over. The Qatari ambassador stood again, desperation in his eyes. My people will die without more help. Then leave the council. Come to us directly. We'll teach you to modify the parasites yourself. We'll show you how to rewrite your own biology. We'll help you become more than you are, but only if you're ready to leave the old ways behind. One by one, other species representatives stood. The Luminari, the Whisper Folk, even some of the Dracal. They all had the same question in their eyes. What if we came to you? Chen addressed them all. The door is open. It always has been. We never wanted to leave anyone behind. We just couldn't let you hold us back anymore. As she turned to leave, Premier Thorian called out one last time. Coordinator Chen, what would you have us tell our people? That humanity abandoned us? Chen stopped at the door and looked back. Tell them the truth, Premier. Tell them that humanity offered them the stars, and the council chose to stay on the ground. Tell them that we offered them growth, and they chose stagnation. Tell them that we offered them partnership, and they chose control. She paused, then added more gently, and tell them that when they're ready to reach for the stars themselves, humanity will be waiting to show them how. As Chen's ship departed, 17 species formally submitted their withdrawal from the Galactic Council. By the end of the year, only 12 species remained, holding meetings in an amphitheater built for 47. The Qatari were the first to fully embrace human partnership. Within months, they had not only survived but thrived. The parasites that had plagued them became symbiotic partners. Their children grew strong and healthy. They learned to build in space, to modify their own bodies, to see the universe as humanity saw it, not as something to fear, but as something to explore. The Luminari followed, their songs evolving into something that could shatter or heal reality itself. The Whisper Folk learned to fully exist in both dimensions at once. Even the proud Dracal eventually came, trading their rigid military tradition for adaptive tactics that made them unstoppable. Each species that joined humanity's path went through the same transformation. First, the fear of letting go of the old ways, then the wonder at what became possible. Finally, the realization that they had been holding themselves back for centuries. Premier Thorian held his final council meeting with only 5 species present. The grand amphitheater echoed with emptiness. The votes were meaningless because there was nothing left to vote on. No resources to distribute, no regulations to impose, no restrictions to enforce. I hereby dissolve the Galactic Council, he announced to the nearly empty chamber. May history judge us fairly. But history had already judged them. They had chosen fear over hope, control over creativity, stagnation over growth. And in the end, they had gotten exactly what they voted for: a galaxy without human interference. The difference was, now most of the galaxy was following humanity to the stars.